Medway's role is ultimately to provide assurance and presence for British overseas territories in the Caribbean region, but also to continue to build working relationships with our allies that are out here as well. The core hurricane season, which starts in June, has been reasonably quiet right up until now, and as we know, September is the height of the season, so it's been interesting to have two hurricanes, one after the other, within days of each other to come through the region. So Medway was positioned quite nicely to meet Fiona as she arrived in across the Windward Islands, and then it meant that we could follow her in as she passed to the north towards Turks and Caicos, and it meant that we arrived within 24 hours of the hurricane passing Turks and Caicos. And then very similar with Hurricane Ian, during which we actually arrived on D-Day. So as it was hitting the tropical force winds that were hitting the island, we actually arrived that evening. Medway's really considered as the first responders, but the teams that we have embarked on board in the form of crisis response troops, we have a team of combat engineers that are able to provide that engineering support to the islands should we be required to do so. So initially it's about conducting recce's, creating relationships with the teams that are on the ground. Sometimes we have an operational reconnaissance liaison team that are landed in theatre, and they did so in the Cayman Islands. But we were actually the first on the scene in Turks and Caicos, so creating that interaction with the governor and the local communities is really key. But ultimately, the equipment that we have on board, emergency relief stores, whether it be tools, chainsaws, tarpaulins, or even medical equipment, we're poised ready to be able to provide that to them if they need it. The team were really welcomed as we arrived on the jetty. They were inserted via seaboats. We've got two Pacific 24s in which we landed the crisis response troop and the governor, and there were lots of local community there welcoming us and cheering some of them as we arrived on the jetty. We've essentially departed providing reassurance from the Cayman Islands, and we're heading out on counter-illicit trafficking operations. We have an embarked law enforcement detachment team from the US Coast Guard. So we're operating here with our allies in the region to combat any counter-illicit trafficking as well. So we're hoping that we can stop any trafficking in the region and certainly stopping anything getting back to the UK, whether that be drugs or otherwise.